Let me see the game. Here we go. We have started here, Levi, with the white pieces starting with d4. We have not seen many d4s in this tournament thus far. The king pawn is not exactly the most moving the queen pawn rather. It's not the most common opening. It does kind of limit your options here. Not getting your light squared bishop developed, not having an opening for your queen out on this diagonal. Levi pushing the c pawn to support the d pawn, and Dr. Alice bringing out the knight to c6. Levi countering by bringing his own knight out onto f3. And now Dr. Alice bringing out his bishop, attacking this knight here on the b square. Levi moving it out, though it was protected by the rook here. He does move it out in front of the queen here onto d2. I have a feeling that Dr. Alice is going to try castling queenside here. Would not be a bad decision. Instead decides to push his f pawn. I don't particularly like this move for a couple of reasons. One, you're not developing this bishop here, and two, you're blocking in this this knight here. He decides, interesting move. He decides to push into the center of the board, and now he is free to take here if he so wishes. Instead, decides to put some pressure onto this knight here on f3. Levi, a little scared, brings his knight back to its original position. Black has complete control of the center of the board here, I feel. Really just nice piece placement here. I'd like to see him get this queen out and then castle queenside, get the rook here onto this d file as well. Oh, I do have it flipped. I apologize. We have Dr. Alice is black in this game. I apologize. I brought up the wrong board. So here we go. We have white just pushing his pawn out here to f3, and black just decides to castle after the push by the queen there. So I kind of think that we're gonna see this maybe, trading off. Yes, that is what we are going to see. Trades off in the middle of the board. White has a little bit of he has a little bit more control here with this pawn on the d file. However, this rook and queen here pointing straight down, a little bit of a threat. We'll put that lightly. The knight also looking right at that square as well. Don't understand that move. You can just take that. You can just take that pawn right there. And he does so. Dr. Alice putting that queen right in the center there, putting a lot of pressure on white in this situation, and queen to a5, pinning this knight to the king. That might be a difficult idea to see, but really just moving to this queen anywhere. e5, c5. Literally any of these squares are fine. Can bring it back here to d6. You know, lots of options. Just be careful. He does bring it to a5. He does see this idea of pinning the knight to the king here. Now, Levi does need to be careful. If he moves this queen out, say he moves it out to here, he could just come in with the queen here. Well, actually, no, he can't because of the bishop. That was very, very silly of me to miss that. That's just, yeah. He had a few options there to take that pawn. He did have he did have the bishop. He had the knight. He had the queen. I would just take here. I would just take this pawn here. This square is still protected by the knight, so Levi cannot take it back. Honestly, Black has quite a few options. Black is clearly winning, Dr. Alice. And he does take that A pawn. Levi can't take back there. Just be fully aware of that. Now, if he ignores it and he like moves something on this side of the board, you can take the knight there, trade it off, and then take the rook. If you know Levi doesn't do that, if he doesn't take back with the bishop. Okay, so he decides to bring his rook out to attack the queen. Not a bad move. I would move the queen back here to a3. You know, idea to maybe move it over. Although I wouldn't blame him to bring it just all the way back to a5 here. This is an interesting move to make. Let's see what Dr. Alice might be thinking in this situation. Give me 1 second while I set up. He does decide instead to take with the bishop there. Just trade off the pieces. So we'll hold off on going to Dr. Alice for a second here. So now he can't take back here with the king because of the rook here. If he takes with the queen, you just take back with the rook. If he takes with the bishop, you just take the rook. So nice idea here. Now his best move, White's best move is just to take with the rook here, and that's just a straight trade. Anything else is not good. It's not good. Okay, so he does take back with the rook here. Probably just drop back queen a5, pin the rook to the king so that you don't get the trade-off here. Levi not looking as terrible as he did in the group stage, as of now. Now, Black does need to be kind of careful here. Now, he can just take back here and trade these off. That is an option. Trade off the rooks. If Levi took back with the queen, you can just trade off the queens. I think Dr. Alice is probably better with lesser pieces than Levi is. Dr. Alice, let's see what he's thinking.
Than Levi, that if I just trade off pieces, I can get to a good space. I can get to a good spot if I just like keep trading. So I'll just do that. So what I kept telling people to do, what I complaining about in the chat last time, like, this is low level, we're not that good, so if you have like this material advantage, you can just be taking pieces. And look, now my queen's not threatened, she just gets to like chill there for a second. Which is very pleasant. So I want to get...
Pleasant indeed. So that is what happened. Dr. Alice decides to trade off the rooks. Levi does take with the bishop. Nice little, nice decision there from Levi. And now, really the onus is on Dr. Alice to try to break through. And it's going to be tough. Bringing the knight in, kind of get it to e5, and maybe just kind of like work it in somehow. He decides to bring his other knight in, which is fine. It brings out his rook to potentially attack on either the D or E files. It also does get his knight into play here. Can potentially trade off here if he wishes. Well, actually, that wouldn't be a trade because the queen is protecting. So something to keep in mind there. Although he could just... hard to say. Lots that is hard to say at this point. Levi pushing a pawn up. And now rook to d8 looks a little nice. He moves the knight over to e5, which I had mentioned earlier as being a potentially good move. It's still fine. Levi pushing that pawn. Now keep in mind here, look, there's no pawns here on A or B. These are past pawns here on the A and B files. Potentially interesting interesting turn of events that may come up. So just something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind here. All right, so now moving the rook to d5, that pins this bishop to the queen. So this bishop isn't going to be able to move anywhere right now. Which could open up if this pawn gets moved, if actually both these pieces are protecting this square. So never mind anything that I am saying. I'd like to see this bishop maybe drop back eventually. Here in Levi's position, he should probably bring the queen over, get it into some sort of like open space a little bit at least. I mean, you can keep pushing this pawn, I guess. Like, really, there's not a lot of great positions here for Levi, unfortunately. No matter what he does, it's gonna be rough sledding. But I think that queen c1 is probably his best bet. Protect this pawn, continue protecting this bishop, and get the queen into open space where it can kind of get a little bit of breathing room. So, yep, and he does move the queen to c1. Am I muted? Had to make sure I was muted on the Zoom call. I mean, black has quite a few good options here. I would like to see this bishop get moved either to one of these two squares, because right now it's not very useful where it is. Getting it onto one of these diagonals. Sorry, one of these diagonals would be much more useful for that bishop right now. Try to get, it can't go in here because of this pawn. I mean, you could try to do this, but this bishop is still sitting here. So I would say probably just drop the bishop back. You can also push one of these pawns. Try to get a pawn to the end of the board. Dr. Al is approaching 4 minutes on the clock. And the clock is definitely a factor. Like, he is in a winning position, but I think he's trying to find a winning play that isn't there yet. Decides to push his pawn to g5, and Levi immediately counters with the knight out, which I don't like because he can just take the knight with the pawn. Yeah, that was a very quick move for that. Yeah, I wouldn't just wait. I would just take it. I would just take there. You can take with the knight as well, put him in check, but I mean, now he can just trade off the knights. And that's something Dr. Alice, I guess, was going for, but it's now a lot less clear than it was. Well, if he does that and can take here. Queen can't take back because the queen's protecting. Continues to push the G pawn instead. This is still open. This is the play you want to make. You win a bishop here, and potentially you trade off a rook for a bishop and a queen if Levi misses the play. Levi pushes his bishop back and at the same time attacks this pawn on G3. Good move from Levi. Good move. You know, there's still a lot that he needs to do with his position after that, but I would say there's options here. Rook to F8. Bishop to C4 forks the rook and the queen. If he takes back with the queen, you take with the queen. That's a very, very questionable maneuver from Dr. Alice, and will Levi make him pay? We'll see what Doc Alice is thinking right now. Can't go to Levi, so let's go to Dr. Alice and see what he's thinking.
Ugh. Should have seen that free bishop. Okay, here we go. So now that that king is moved, this is a free bishop now. It is not protected. So this time I'm going to pay attention to the free bishop and take it. Yeah. Okay. Give up one free bishop, shame on me.
Give up one free bishop, shame on me. You know, or whatever. He does see the bishop there. Oh no, dude, you queen f2 is checkmate. Protected here by the pawn. You're not defending the square anymore. You can't move that away. This was protecting, and now that's just mate. I mean, this is potentially a tough mate to see, but pawn is protecting here, the queen here, pawn protects, queen hits here. You know, that's, he doesn't see it. He might get another shot. White needs to be very careful here. White should bring it back. He does. Are we sure he ain't listening to my stream? So now, okay, so bringing the rook onto this open F file, and this, anything other than bishop takes this pawn is mate in 1 with rook F1 checkmate. Because this pawn is protecting both of these squares. Even if the bishop comes away, you can just do the same thing here. Queen goes to f2, checkmate. So if this bishop doesn't take here, and the bishop doesn't move, if the bishop doesn't move, it's rook f1 checkmate. And if the bishop does move, it's queen f2 checkmate. Takes the pawn. I wonder if I should keep saying things. Levi making some really good moves to just save his position. Both these players are getting low on the clock. Minute 30 left for Dr. Alice, a minute 46 on Levi's clock. Something to keep in mind here. Dr. Alice taking his time, thinking about his position, starts to move this pawn down. I think he's thinking about maybe getting himself another queen, potentially. We'll see what happens. He is looking to block that idea with queen a1, putting it right in the line of sight here, and that's a free pawn. All right, nice little fork here, putting pressure on both the bishop and the king. So the king's only move is here. Only other move is blocking with the bishop, and blocking with the bishop would be a potentially devastating maneuver. All right, so this does protect the bishop. It also opens up this rook, which is potentially dangerous here. All right, so now the knight comes in, trying to attack this bishop here on g3. However, this does block this f-file for now for the rook. So something to keep in mind here. Okay, so he takes that pawn that was sitting there with the bishop. Queen is also hitting that square. This is not over. Keep in mind, both these players down on the clock. Dr. Alice at 46 seconds. Levi creeping down towards 30. So these guys need to make accurate moves. Oh, trying to trade off the queens here. Now, will Levi decide to do that? He does not. He could just take here. You're blocking in your king. And black wins by timeout. Unfortunate for Levi, he just didn't have time to make the move. I was looking on the Zoom call, and he wanted to move that queen. He just took a bit too long to do it. we are going to be right back. So Dr. Alice wins game 1. He will need a win or a draw in game 2 to move on with the white pieces. Here we go. We have a new game here, and we have E5 coming from Dr. Alice, or E4, and then E5 coming back from Levi. Dr. Alice brings out his knight here, and now should have taken with the knight here. This is actually a position where if you are white, you want to take back with the knight here, because if he takes back with this knight, then you have you can just move the queen up. If he moves the knight out of the way, you have an option to take his queen. Instead, brings the bishop out, quickly castles. Now he could still do this here. If he takes the pawn here, that's a free pawn. I get the feeling he might decide to do something like this, though. Okay, he decides to just push up d4, which is fine. Pushing d4 is fine. But keep in mind that this pawn is still just hanging there. All right, he does decide to take here. Okay, knight going here actually would be good because it's protected here by the bishop. Drops it back. But yeah, that knight could take here. Because it's protected by the bishop, the king cannot take it back. There's no other pieces that can take it, so he would just be able to bring the knight back and just kind of keep it there. But decides to drop it back to f3 after taking the pawn. I have a feeling that he's just going to push h3, but you could see c3 and then d4 would be a decent move. The knight coming out here would be okay. It would block that development, though, from the dark square bishop. Lots of options here for Dr. Alice. He does decide to push that bishop out here. And now we have a very nice symmetrical position here. The only difference being that this pawn is sitting in the middle here. Levi pushing out that pawn there, looking to just push this bishop back. Could push it back this way. I think that would probably be better if he kept it on this diagonal, and he does so. Maybe baiting out potentially this move, which would ruin the pawn structure in front of the king. Brings his knight out to attack this square. Now, yeah, bishop to e3. Trade off these. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. You're doubling up your pawns here. And in addition, now, I don't know about that. I don't know that, and you're just leaving your H pawn weak over here. It just feels gross to me. It feels very gross. So Levi starting to develop, brings his knight out to c6. And now I like this idea of pushing up c3, then pushing d4, getting into the bishop's grill a little bit. All right, he does push c4 or c3 here. Idea is to push to d4 and get into that bishop's head. Queen, maybe bring it out here, f6. Kind of open up this diagonal for your queen. Put some pressure onto this weak pawn here on f4. Or undefended pawn, rather. You can also put the bishop here on h3, attack the rook. He does bring the queen over. Levi playing pretty well. I don't think most people coming into this match would have expected this, but here we are. It's a new world, and this pawn here, I would say immediately just push this pawn. Just make him do something here with the bishop, because you know you can give up the pawn here and take the bishop if he misses it, you know, like, and you still have another move, so you can go pawn, push the bishop back, and then you can do something with this pawn here. There are options. And now this is undefended now. I do not like that, Sam I am. All right. Levi does miss taking the knight here, but this knight is in trouble. You need to do something to protect it here. Okay, he brings his other knight out to protect it. This queen, though, just seems like in no man's land, you know? The queen can still take this pawn here. You could also bring the knight over. He pushes the bishop back. I guess in his idea was, you know, like, this is going to happen, may as well just move it back prematurely, which is fine. I don't necessarily dislike the move. All right, so ideas for black would be to kind of do something like this, or like this. I would maybe move the king over just to kind of guard against that, because if he does this, then that might just be mate if he did that. Pushing the pawn here in front of the queen does block the queen from getting over to this G square. Queen can't go here because of the knight. It does limit black's options with the queen. Not necessarily a great move in terms of like positioning, but in terms of avoiding a potential checkmate, I think that works fine. So brings his knight over, attacking this bishop here on c4. I like potentially pushing there. I don't know. There's a lot of moves. I would say maybe bishop bring it here. That would be kind of getting on that diagonal there. Not really any way to attack that square for black. Brings his rook over onto the e file. Maybe potentially looking. Okay, so he trades his knight for a bishop. Oh! You can't do that. You can't do that. Remember why you brought that knight there in the first place. You had to protect this knight. Well, Levi didn't see it. Queen f4 protects, attacks. I like Queen f4 here, and I think that's probably the best move here for White in this situation. You know, you can also bring the queen over here to d1 to protect the knight as well, but putting it here opens up this diagonal, puts pressure on the bishop, doesn't pin your knight to your queen if you did move it to d1. There's... I guess maybe he would be afraid of that, but... Okay, so he does bring it over to d1 to protect the knight. This does pin the knight to the bishop, though, which is a little bit iffy. So now, this is a very, very even position. Hard to say what the best moves are. Maybe push some of these pawns. Maybe... I accidentally moved that piece. He does move this pawn instead, putting an attack onto the knight here on c4. However, knight to e3, or no, that's e5. e3 here, attacking the bishop. I think that would be a fine move, and he can trade it off here. That might be his best move in this situation, or to trade off here. Either one of these would probably be the best move. I think that d4, knight to d5, attack the queen, and this is actually I like this idea. You attack the queen here. You attack this weak pawn here on, or this hanging pawn here on c7, with ideas to maybe get to this rook here on a8. Put the pressure on. Now white is looking a little better right now. You know, both players around 5 minutes on the clock. You know, lots left to go of this game potentially. We are on move 20. And now, you hung your queen, and Levi, after going a game and a half without blundering his queen, has done it. And I mean, you're winning a bishop at the very least. I mean, this is a good trade for white. If Levi does indeed take, he does. Probably bring this a rook over, but this is definitely winning for white. You basically win a bishop here. So big plays coming from white in this situation. So now we have two rooks on each side. You know, black has one bishop to white's two knights. White can potentially make some moves. He does protect this this pawn here on c7 from the bishop or from the knight attacking it. You know, let's take a look. Maybe we'll see. Maybe Dr. Alice has got an idea of what he wants to do here.
Is that a trapped bishop? That's a trapped bishop. Yeah, I just won that bishop. He has nowhere to go. So I can trade if I want. Do I want to trade? I don't know if I want to trade. Yeah, why not? Give him a weakness in his pawn structure too. Then I'm gonna probably go up here, maybe start battering on the A file.
Well, what you should do, after Levi didn't take that knight for some reason, what you should do is you should get that knight out of there. Either one of these spaces would be fine here. I mean, you can push a4. a4 would be okay. But knight to d5, just get the knight out of there, protect it. I think that's probably your best move. Like, this looks okay, but, you know, after king moves here, what do you do with the knight? It's trapped then, you know, it can't... not what I wanted to do. Or is that the move that was made? It was the move that was made. So if the king comes here, yeah, and now look what you've done. You've trapped your knight. There's nowhere it can move without it being taken. Best place you could put it, e5 probably. Force him to take here. Instead pushes a4. Probably should just take. Yes, he does. And now he takes the pawn here on b5. Yeah. I mean, white is still winning here. Remember that the bishop is off the board now. And so he's up a full knight here. He's up 2 pawns. I would bring this... yeah, that's a good move there. Take that pawn there. Put some pressure on the king, potentially. If he takes here, which is probably his best move, you know, maybe just push b4. And don't let Levi keep going after these pawns. Oh, now you can take this pawn. Is he baiting him to take this and then going here? King has to move and then take the rook. So Levi cannot take here, or else he will lose his rook here on h8. He moves it to c8, and he's just looking to trade off the rooks. Black doesn't have a choice. He can take... He can literally do anything he wants. This rook is dead. This rook is dead. Yep, and he decides... Okay. So, simplifying a little bit, white has control here. This pawn's... Whew. That's a strong pawn diagonal there. He's trying to put a lot of pressure on this knight. I would just move the knight here, maybe. Maybe move it back. Really, either way, you're doing okay in this position. You just need to move the knight. Yeah, keep an eye on the clock a little bit. Levi down below 3.5 minutes. Dr. Alice down below 2.5 minutes. Move 34. You know, potentially a lot of chess left. Dr. Alice, with his structure, I think he should be able to queen. I think he has the capability of getting a pawn to promote here. If he can find a way potentially to trade off these rooks, I think that he's in a strong position. Okay. Levi moving quickly after that move, and this is interesting. This is an interesting position. I would say you probably want to... what do you do as black? Bring it here, attack this pawn. He decides to go after this pawn, which he can block by going h8, which he does, or h3 rather, which he does. If he goes to the pawn here, that pawn is pinned to the king, so keep that in mind. He's gonna have to move this king out of the way. So the pawn here, if he can't take back, and then if he were to take back here eventually, the rook would be able to take that piece. Instead, Levi moving his rook over to h8, I guess to protect this pawn. Levi, or Dr. Alice immediately moving to a8. We're getting a few faster moves. Dr. Alice now up on the clock after these moves, and Levi kind of struggling. Needs to be very careful what he does here, because if he does move this rook, this is a potential option. Take that pawn, put check on the king. If I were him, I would probably just move the king. C6 maybe. All right, he moves it there to e7, which is okay. Okay, now good move by Levi here. You want to keep the rook here. Protect that pawn. Puts check on the king here. And now the king can't move here because of this pawn. Now he's going to put pressure onto this pawn here. This pawn is dead. This pawn is definitely dead. If he pushes, you take. If he doesn't push, you take. Not a lot of available options. He decides to move this pawn instead, which opens the king up for going here. But yeah, now this is great move there from Dr. Alice, identifying that he gets a pin on the rook. Levi takes back, gets the queen out of this situation, and now white in complete control. Just gonna gobble up pawns. Now keep in mind, all Dr. Alice has to do is draw this game. Drawing the game would give him a win, because he did win game 1. A draw would give each player 0.5, and that would be all she wrote, really. This king, yeah, this is mate in 1 in a few different ways. That would be mate. That would be mate. That would be mate. Dr. Alice missing the mate. Anything but king d7 here is mate in 1 again. Not that there's a lot of legal moves. Queen c5, I guess. Yeah, literally these two moves. And now all right, so now it becomes a little bit more on, like, a little bit longer of a mate. Dr. Alice is just gonna queen. And he's basically just stuck between a few of these squares. Yeah, and Now it's mate in 1. Queen to b8 is mate. Few different mates here. He can go here. All right, playing with your food. Now that's a yes. Thank you. White wins by checkmate, and Dr. Alice will be moving on in the tournament. So great stuff to Dr. Alice. Well played.